Good afternoon, Coolest Coast. It's time for Coffee on the Coast. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. Delighted to welcome Michael Rock and Kathi Rock. These are hummingbird experts. So lovely to see you guys.
Thank you
Nice to
so
see you,
much,
Tina.
Tina.
And we should point out, while we can see some beautiful hummingbirds in your decoration in the background, the hummingbirds have not yet returned to Wisconsin for the season. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. The hummingbirds migrate to Mexico and Central America for the winter. Although they are on their way back to the United States, there are several different migration maps. One is journeynorth.org, which is based at UW-Madison Arboretum. Another one is hummingbirdcentral.com. Hummingbirds are in the southern half of the United States right now, specifically the ruby-throated hummingbird, which is the one that comes to Wisconsin.
And I think, did you previously tell me that the ruby-throated hummingbird is the only hummingbird species that visits Wisconsin?
It's the only one that nests here. Some people may be lucky enough in the late summer to fall to get a wandering uh, western hummingbird that comes to this part of the country, such as a rufous hummingbird. And it has a brown back versus the ruby-throated hummingbird, which has a green back.
Okay, good to know. I just want to put up this placard so viewers know Michael and Kathi Rock are going to be coming to Manitowoc. They're going to do a program at the Manitowoc Public Library with the Master Gardeners called Bloom and Zoom. This is on Thursday, April 9th in the Balkansky Community Room, all about making your yard attractive to hummingbirds. Did I get that right?
Yes, yes.
So, what is it about a hummingbird? What makes a hummingbird so fascinating, so special?
Well, I think it's really fun to watch them as they feed from our flowers and feeders. Uh, they're certainly the size, a bird only the size of your thumb, but they can do so many things. They can fly backwards, upside down. They interact with each other. Sometimes they even interact with us. Later in the season, I've often had them approach my face. Uh, you could be just several inches away from them as they're feeding. They're just so incredibly fascinating. You never know what they're going to do next and which flower they're going to choose. You could just watch them for hours. And one year we had a really fun thing happen where we had about as many as 20 different hummingbirds show up around 7 p.m. at night, right before their bedtime. We called it Hummingbird Happy Hour. So we had all these hummingbirds zooming around, and all these people came who had recently been at our September garden tour to gather and watch the hummingbirds. And that was just such a fun year. And it certainly was a happy hour for both them and us.
Oh, it sounds like it. So you guys have some knowledge that you want to share with the Manitowoc community when you come about how to make your yard more attractive to hummingbirds, right? I feel like in my life, I have not had the opportunity to see enough hummingbirds. I can count probably 5 times I've ever seen a hummingbird. So, what are some methods? Is it different things that you plant, different things that you'd feed them? Tell us a little bit about attracting a hummingbird.
We have our presentation in two halves. I talk about hummingbirds in general and talk about the feeders. And the feeders are important because when the hummingbirds first arrive in late April, early May, there's not that many flowers for them to go to. They have to have nectar and they also eat insects. And daffodils and tulips and crocus, those are not hummingbird flowers. So you really have to have the feeders at the beginning of the season to make sure the hummingbirds do not bypass your yard. And then we get into the flower part of this.
And certainly, there are specialized flowers that work better for hummingbirds. So many flowers are appealing to our eye, but they don't really offer a nectar reward for hummingbirds. A couple of favorite plants that we'll talk about are salvias. That's probably the premier plant for attracting hummingbirds, and not the perennial type of salvias, but the tropical ones that are now so readily available for purchase in local nurseries. And they're so colorful and they bloom all season long. So you're really getting a lot of mileage out of those plants. They're always available for hummingbirds versus a perennial plant that just blooms for a few weeks and then it's a green plant after that.
Oh,
Another
got it.
plant is called Fuchsia or Mexican cigar plant. It has little tubular orange flowers that look like tiny little lit cigars. And that's a wonderful plant. Again, what we call an ever-blooming plant, and it doesn't even require any deadheading or anything. It's all self-cleaning. All you have to do is water it, and it's always available for hummingbirds. But we do recommend both feeders and flowers because you will see the maximum number of hummingbirds using that method. So starting in May and then going all the way through to like the second week of October is when most of the hummingbirds are gone and have departed for Mexico or Central America.
So what I'm
So
hearing too is with the flowers that you're recommending, you're making your yard beautiful for yourself as well as for the hummingbirds if it's an annual that's blooming all year long.
right, right. Of course, we grow some plants that aren't specifically for hummingbirds, and because I'm a gardener, I enjoy growing those too. But I would say that at least 75% of our yard is specifically for hummingbirds. We always like to say plant it and they will come, and that's really true, especially if you live in an urban area. People who live in rural areas or like way out in the country next to a lake or a river, they have it so much easier because they don't have like cars and people everywhere. Hummingbirds instinctively, like any wild bird, would prefer more privacy for nesting and raising their family. And so if you don't have those ideal conditions, you have to create your very own hummingbird paradise with feeders and flowers. And that's what we're going to try and teach people to do in our session.
Do hummingbirds also want a bird bath or some kind of water source? Is that important?
Michael, did you?
Yes. Well, yes and no. Hummingbirds are the size of your thumb, so they're really teeny tiny. So most bird baths, they would be way too deep for hummingbirds. So you could use a conventional bird bath and put rocks in it to make it just a fraction of an inch level of the water above the rocks. Hummingbirds do, though, like to go through mist. So we have a small garden pond with a mister, and the hummingbirds will sometimes fly through the mist. If there's been rain, we have a huge hosta plant behind our pond, and the hummingbirds will do this leaf bathing where they're rubbing their bodies on the leaves in order to bathe.
Oh, how
So
fun to watch. And are there like natural predators for the hummingbirds and or other birds that would bully hummingbirds that you would try to not want to attract if you're trying to attract hummingbirds?
Well, we tend to not fill our seed feeders during the summer when we're uh, attracting hummingbirds, but the majority of songbirds are definitely not predators of hummingbirds. We feel that those other birds can find natural food sources. Certainly, hummingbirds are tiny, fearless dynamos that aren't really afraid of anything. Surprisingly, well, one of the major predators of hummingbirds would be house cats that are lurking around in your yard. So that's one reason we suggest keeping the flowers high up off the ground so that a house cat can't reach your hummingbirds. And then another surprising predator is a praying mantis. They can easily catch and kill and eat a hummingbird, which is hard to believe. And typically, praying mantis are viewed as beneficial insects to have in the garden, but not for hummingbirds. And we suggest that you just very gently take the praying mantis and move it far away from your home. You don't have to kill it or anything, but it is clearly a predator of hummingbirds. Certainly, creatures like squirrels will love to eat hummingbird eggs. But the interesting thing about hummingbirds is that they fly so fast that they can usually get away from a lot of predators that might be out there lurking in your yard.
I would have
And in,
never guessed a praying mantis was a culprit.
yeah, it's it's too bad because they are viewed as beneficial insects generally, especially for people trying to garden naturally. And that's another topic is we always recommend that people never use pesticides in their yard. Sometimes the hummingbird gardener can do more harm than good by spraying too many insecticides. Even sometimes people will spray insecticides on their feeder to keep ants and things away and other insects, bees. But that could be very harmful to hummingbirds. So we try and recommend that people garden organically as much as they can and not use those harmful pesticides.
So important, right? An accidental, mistake that people are making. Do you find there's other mistakes that people are inadvertently making that dissuade the hummingbirds from enjoying their gardens?
One of the more frequent ones could be, and we've seen this, people fill their feed at the beginning of the season, and then they don't fill it again for weeks or months. And the nectar can get
Hmm.
moldy. The mold could certainly be harmful to a hummingbird. So that would be one of the more common mistakes, is to not keep the feeders clean and not changing the nectar appropriately. And we do talk about that in our presentation. We have a nice slide showing if the air temperature is in a certain range, how often do you need to change the nectar?
Oh, all right. I'm just going to put this back up for viewers because Kathi and Michael Rock are coming to Manitowoc Public Library for a Bloom and Zoom presentation all about gardening for hummingbirds. This will be with the Manitowoc Master Gardeners on Thursday, April 9th. What else can people expect from your presentation?
Well, one fun thing that we do is we give away door prizes. And do you
So
think we'll
at the
do maybe
beginning of
three?
probably, well, I'll bring four. We don't know how large the audience will be right now, but I'll come prepared. And they're items like hummingbird feeders, hummingbird calendars, books about hummingbirds. We like to encourage people to take what they learn in our program and, try and extend that knowledge and use that knowledge in their very own gardens. So that's the purpose of it. So four lucky people will win a door prize. We also have some wonderful videos at the end of, me hand feeding hummingbirds in Costa Rica when we were there. A great video of a day in our yard where we had an incredible number of hummingbirds. And then a beautiful film. Some filmmakers came to our yard and made a film about hummingbirds and hummingbird gardens. And a wonderful segment from their film will also be shown at the end of our presentation.
And so viewers know you live in Wisconsin, right? So if you're doing it in your garden, they should be able to do it in their gardens here, right?
Correct. Yeah, we are in Madison,
Absolutely.
and
Okay.
uh, and we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because we are in a city. If we were out in the country, we would have even more hummingbirds.
So I often hear people talk about lake effect, right? In Manitowoc, we're very close to the lake. Does that affect the hummingbirds that visit this area in any way?
I would not think so. In
Okay.
fact,
Yes, sometimes they can, in their migrations, they tend to follow major bodies of water, such as the Mississippi River or Lake Michigan. So sometimes there, at certain times of the year, there can be higher numbers closer to a major source of water like that.
Excellent. So good to know. Well, it sounds like this is going to be a fantastic presentation. Viewers, Bloom and Zoom, Gardening for Hummingbirds, along with the Manitowoc Master Gardeners, is happening Thursday, April 9th, 6 o'clock p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library, Belkansky Community Room with Michael and Kathi Rock. Anything else you want to tell viewers? I imagine for somebody that's new and wanting to do this, this is definitely the perfect presentation. But somebody that's also been trying and or wants to learn additional tips, this would be, I mean, really covers both demographics, right?
yeah, I think our presentation will appeal to both beginners and experienced gardeners. Uh, and many gardeners may not know uh, the plants that attract hummingbirds, and particularly, as Kathy said, the salvia family, which we really like the annual tropical salvias because those are just premier plants for hummingbirds. And
Well,
so
and like
this presentation gets people fired up for gardening season, which is almost upon us since we hopefully will have our last frost date at some point in the near future.
we always love to say, there's always more to learn. So no matter where you are in your journey, we hope to share something brand new that will help people to enhance their hummingbird garden and their gardening and birding experience generally.
Awesome. Will you be doing a Q&A as part of your presentation? So if somebody has some questions about what they've been doing or trying and things like that?
Yes, we always do that at the end of our presentation.
Okay.
And then people
Fantastic.
could follow up with me by email if something comes up later on. That's always available.
And there's a wealth of information that they can find online, specifically from us. We have a website, hummingbirdgardening.net. We also have an Instagram uh, account, which is Hummingbird Gardening.
Awesome. Awesome. And is it beneficial? The more people that have hummingbird gardens, the more hummingbirds it attracts, the better it is for everyone? Or can there be too much?
Probably not too much. I mean, we can't say that we have experience with this. People in our neighborhood know us as the hummingbird people with our huge garden. We haven't had people around us really take it to the level that we do this at, and I wouldn't expect that. We did have a neighbor immediately to the west of us that would hang some hummingbird feeders, and she received some of the excess hummingbirds in our yard, in her yard. I think it would probably only be beneficial if more people did this. There probably would be more hummingbirds.
Awesome.
I
Awesome.
think you can never go wrong with gardening for hummingbirds, gardening with a purpose, that it's always beneficial, especially in our world today, where more and more natural areas are being destroyed for buildings. And, you can never have too many hummingbirds in my mind.
Nice. Oh, Michael and Kathi, thank you so much for taking the time to be my guest today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Tina.
so much, Tina.
My guests, Michael Rock and Kathi Rock, you can join them for Zoom and Bloom on April 9th at the Manitowoc Public Library. I'm your host, Tina Prigge. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Coffee on the Coast. Stay cool, everyone.